I used to love waking up to the sun's warmth before it was forcibly replaced with the cold and artificial glare of those horrible neon lights. I am filled with regret as I remember the crisp air of the snow-covered mountain slopes. I can't stand this mix-up of oxygen and other gases radiating through the air vents of the shelters we call cities. No doubt, were it not for the scientific progress that led to these makeshift solutions, we'd all be doomed. Of course, I am not referring to us humans alone, but also all other star people living on this now sterile rock we are forced to call home. Unfortunately, the higher we climb, the harder the fall. It's too late for our planet now, but if we don't correct our mistakes, not even our children's futures will be saved. That's why tetra-titanium spaceships, known as ARCs, were sent into infinite space, while us captains were assigned the most arduous and salient mission of all, to find a new planet able to welcome future generations. Our hopes. Our ships mainly carry thousands of cryogenic cylinders containing the genome of animal and plant species that will allow us to fulfill our sacred task. Our crew was selected from the most brilliant scientists and engineers, supported by elite pilots and special forces. We don't know what we will find out there, but we are prepared for every situation and we trust that we are ready for it. Hopefully our prayers will be answered. After many long months of navigation, we finally found a planet that appears to satisfy our needs. I can't wait to lay foot on steady ground and breathe pure air. Andromeda 2.0 has begun the landing procedure. I still have a few minutes left to roll my cigars and complete this tedious recording.
Hello everyone and welcome to the One Stop Co-op Shop. This is Colin and today we are going to do a playthrough of Sine Tempore, or Sine Tempore. I'm not entirely sure if I'm saying that right. This game is pretty special to me because Nick, one of our subscribers and Patreons, sent this to me free of charge just because he was done playing it and he wanted to give it to me. And I really appreciated that, so I was super excited to learn it and get it to the table. It seems like a really interesting sci-fi dungeon crawler, and I'm really excited to show you guys how it works and see if it's something that you might want to pick up. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to set up the game because there are different types of missions. We're going to do the first narrative mission. So we're going to set that up, and then in the next video we'll jump into the playthrough. I'm also going to show you all the different characters and everything like that, so that's why this one's a little bit longer. If you just want to skip that and jump into the playthrough, check out the next video. Let's get going. Our first character over here is our captain, Akab. You heard him in the intro. You can see here, this is the mats that you would receive if you don't have the Kickstarter. I am going to play with the Kickstarter mats just because they're a little bit easier for recording purposes. Look at this, so much smaller. But you will see that you have that option if you do get the Kickstarter version. Each character is a specific type, so he is a captain type. That means he can have captain items. He also has 2 items that are specific to him. We have all these different stats over here. Our first stat over here is our rapidity. When it is our turn to activate, that gives us how many actions that we can take, up to 6 for him. And then as you do that, you move yourself around the momentum board, which we'll see in a second. This one is precision. His precision is 3. If he's using a ranged weapon, you use that to determine your attack strength plus any modifiers. This one over here is called your physical, and you'll use that when you're defending against physical attacks, as well as when you're attacking with a physical weapon. So you'll use 3 plus whatever, that's usually a melee weapon. Over here, this 2 denotes the mind, and it indicates the settler's intelligence and knowledge, which is used to pass all tests requiring mental action. It also indicates the physic ability of the hero, and is used both to launch psychic powers and resist them. And then finally over here we have our health. So if ever that goes down to 0, then we're knocked out. I have to play this game more before I decide to invest if I'm going to paint, but I will say, look at these minis. They look awesome. So here is Akab right here. We also have our threat tracker here. We always start at 1. That threat is important because enemies will target people with higher threats, or they might have an objective until you get to a threat that's equal to that objective. They're going to do that instead. And you'll see how that works in the playthrough. You can see here there's spaces to place tokens. As you play, you'll gain different skills, and you'll place them here. You always start with your 1 basic skill, so we'll look at what Akab's skill is in a second. But then as you play, you'll gain skills. You can hold a maximum of 5. So each time you play, if you have more than 5, you'll have to pick which 5 you're going to bring for that specific mission, which is kind of cool. On the back side of our skill sheet, we see that it says Tactician. So Akab is a Tactician. Once per activation, Akab can spend 1 AP to raise or lower his TV by 1 point. That's his threat value. TV stands for threat value. So he can make himself more or less of a threat to enemies, maybe to get them to target him or to not target him. And just so you guys can see this is your skill tree. Each character will have this. Really cool. So these are the ones that you can initially purchase, and then you can branch off of them. Some of them will actually replace. You see how that's a solid line? If I decide to, after I upgrade to this skill, and then I go to this skill, that actually replaces this skill. But if I want to purchase this skill, then I actually have 2 different skills. And remember, you can have a max of 5 that are out, so sometimes you might be incentivized to do the upgraded versions. If you have too many skills, you won't be able to use them all. So kind of a cool way of doing that. It also tells you, okay, he is a leadership and an attack character. We'll go ahead and read through all the items when we actually use them. Otherwise, this video is going to be really long. So here we have our 6-handed wonder, Alexandra. She is our healer. She is awesome. She can hold different items or additional items because she has 6 hands. Kind of cool. Her rapidity is 5, so when she gets to activate, she can use up to 5 action points or AP. She's got for her range attacks, she'll roll 3. For her physical attacks or physical defense, it's 2. Her mind, she's pretty intelligent at 3, and her health total is 5. Alexandra starts with the top left skill, Circule, I think it says. Alexandra can perform the actions collect and interact without spending the required action points. She also is multi-handed, so she has 6 hand equipment slots instead of only 2. And just because I think it's awesome to see, this is her skill sheet as well. She's a healer and an alchemic. Next we have Ulysses. He is actually from the Black Hole expansion. He's the only one that's from the expansion. Everyone else is from the core set. He's considered a security character, so he can hold security weapons. He only gets 4 AP though, so he can't do as much on his turn. I shouldn't say 4 AP, 4 rapidity, so he has 4 AP when it's his turn. He uses 3 for his range attacks. He actually has his defense is 4, and if he does any physical attacks, that's what his 4 he'll use. His mind resistance is 2, and his health is 6. His starting skill is he has the Cycloptic Punch. It costs 2 AP. He can attack range 1. ATB stands for you add that value to whatever value that you're using to attack with. So he's attacking with his fist here. So he has that 4 for physical. So he'll actually roll 4 plus 2, 6 dice. Any fist he gets is considered damage, and he'll push the enemy. Kind of makes sense because of how big he is. This is his skill tree. You can see he's defense and war machine. Last we have Jukas. He's one of my favorites because he can give rerolls to everybody. That's one of his special abilities. It states here that he has 5 for rapidity. He has 2 for his ranged attacks, 3 for his physical defense or physical attacks. His mind is 4, which totally makes sense, and a total of 5 health. And he's what we call a psionic character. He'll be able to use psionic abilities eventually. Right now, though, he'll just have basic weapons like everyone else. He might be able to upgrade them when he rolls dice to turn them into mind attacks, which is cool because a lot of enemies don't have mind resistance that might have physical resistance. So that's one of his perks. He has what's called Premonition. In Jukas' token phase, all other heroes within 3 squares of him gains a reroll token if they have no reroll tokens. Love it. So I love being able to have him help other characters get those rerolls because there are a lot of dice rolling, or is a lot of dice rolling in this game. Here we have his skill tree, and you can see he's Fury and ESP. As you heard in the intro, what we're trying to do is find a planet that we can colonize. So this is the planet map, and I love how this looks. It looks so cool. So it says Landing Zone HQ. That is where we are landing right now and going to have our first narrative mission. After that, if we win, we then can start going and exploring out to the blue locations. After we do the blue locations and we get enough experience, we can do the next narrative mission, which will then unlock the green locations, and then we have to do more to get to the yellow. Then there's the red ones, and I think there's 2 purple ones. Yeah, it's really cool how this works. You slowly spread out, gain your influence. All these locations will give you different elements that you can use then to power up your ship, maybe purchase new items or build them, because you're not really purchasing items, you're actually crafting them. You're going to craft them with these different elements. All of our starting equipment actually has 3 levels. We're going to all start with level 1, and then we can craft them with the elements that we receive by winning scenarios to then level up our weapons, which I think is really cool. So instead of having a loot deck, we have a resource deck. So we find resources while we are exploring. Here we have Genesis, our ship that we took, the Ark that we landed on this planet. In between missions, we can go to these different locations and gain certain benefits. Some of them, though, are actually locked, and then we'll have to use elements to unlock them. Also, almost all of them we can level up, but we have to spend elements to do that. So we can actually upgrade our ship. Another cool thing that we can do, and that's outside of the actual missions themselves. The mission that we're going to be doing today is called A Warm Welcome. You can see here on this left-hand side, this is the map. I, of course, have it completely inversed. Sorry about that. But yeah, if you flip the map upside down, it should be the same, hopefully. It shows us where our enemies start. It shows we have 1 loot right here. We have 2 spawn points here, which each have 10 health, by the way. So you can, if you're lucky enough, go and try and destroy them. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that. We have hunters here and spriggans here, and we have an antenna here. We also have mushrooms here, and I'll show you all that in a second. We also have our momentum board. So unlike most games where everyone gets a turn and then the enemies get a turn and then you go to the next round, there's none of that. Instead, you track where you are within this momentum wheel. And this wheel, we're going to have time pass and go from phase to phase. When you get to a phase where your hero's token is, you get to activate. And you get to use as many action points as you want. As you do that, you'll move around the wheel. You can use up to that rapidity value. Once you're done, you place your token there. And then you don't get to go until you're we're at that phase again. So it allows this much more dynamic experience. Now, I am going to play with an optional rule called reactions. If ever you move across an enemy token, so let's say this hero here is going to do a 2 AP action, and he'd go 1, 2, he'd move past this enemy token, that enemy, or enemies if they're on the board, have a chance to react to that hero before the hero does that action. And you'll see how that works in the playthrough. I think I'm doing it right. A lot of people have had questions on it, and it's confusing. But I think hopefully I'm going to play this right. Let me know if I'm wrong, how I'm playing it. But if I am playing it right, it really makes the board a lot more dynamic, because you can't just, activate, do a bunch of things like attack 3 times and kill that enemy before it attacks you. Because if you go past it, it is going to attack you. The difference is, if you start in that location with the enemy and move past it, they won't activate. Or if you end your activation in the same space as that enemy, it won't activate the enemy. You actually have to move past it. So there's a lot of strategical decisions of how many action points am I going to use. If I use too many, that enemy's going to get a shot off on me. Do I really want that? Stuff like that. Down here, it tells us the 2 types of enemies. So we have spriggans and hunters, and we saw on the board where they're located. We now get to decide for our 4 heroes where they want to be on the actual momentum board. Up top, way up here, you can see that we have start mission at 1.1. That means we're at phase 1, round 1. And then this will end at round 3, phase 1. That's the end of the mission. Here we have our momentum board. You can see up here, this is phase 1. And then this determines the round. So you see how this says round 1 and that arrow's pointed there? After this goes all the way around back to phase 1, then we move this to round 2. Okay, but we'll keep this at round 1. The spriggans are going to activate first. Then we have Alexandria and Akab here in phase 2. Then the hunters and Ulysses will be in phase 3. And then finally, we have Jukas for phase 4. The air generated by the Genesis engines shakes the trees in the designated landing area. Several bizarre creatures typical of this planet's fauna run away, terrified. The tailgate opens as your mind sets into exploration mode for your first mission. You need to secure the area and install the antenna that will allow you to map the entire planet. The holovisor sensors seem to be going crazy. You made a mistake. This planet is not uninhabited like you thought by advanced civilizations. Uh-oh. So our victory condition here is just to have no enemy adjacent to the antenna when the time runs out. So when we get to round 3, phase 1. We're defeated if all of our heroes are KO'd, or if we don't succeed in this victory condition. We do have enemy objectives, and this is what's kind of cool about this game. So all rank troop enemies, those are going to be the spriggans. They want to stay adjacent to that antenna, and it has a threat value of 4. So they're going to stay next to that antenna until one of our heroes is at a threat value of 4 or higher. Once they get higher than 4, then they're actually going to target us instead. But they have as a secondary attack the heroes. And I've seen this wrong in a lot of playthroughs because if they are adjacent to the antenna, and they already are, or they can stay adjacent but they can attack the heroes, they will do that as well. So they're going to attack as long as they can do the first part. Our hunters here, they're not interested in the antenna. They're interested in attacking the heroes. We will have an enemy wave, so perform an enemy draft when the momentum scores 2.1 using only troop cards, and then we'll ignore any special abilities on the antenna card. It's just there to denote that we don't want any enemies next to it at the end of round 3, phase 1. The 3 sets of cards we're going to need for this scenario are the troop enemies. So these are the troop enemies that I have shuffled up, because we're going to draft one of those at 2.1. All of our resources cards, I've shuffled those up, and then any of our wound cards. If ever you take 3 wounds, you're going to have to reveal one of these wound cards, and that stays with you until you go back to Genesis and actually go to the infirmary. And they're not very good, so hopefully we won't have to take any of those. Well, I called our scenic element a mushroom. It's actually a bush. So it has rules. Normally, when you're doing an exploration mission, you actually have to place it on the board. We don't have to worry about here because it's a narrative mission. And its effect is, it is possible to cross a square occupied by a bush, but it's not possible to end a movement on it. So you can actually move through it. That's fine. It states here that it is light cover but rough terrain. And it has 5 health, so we can actually destroy it if we want. What light cover is, light cover protects those behind it by providing cover. It can be attacked and destroyed as a normal enemy model if it suffers a total of wounds equal to its health. Here we have our 2 enemy types. We have hunters and we have our spriggans. So the hunters have 5 rapidity. They can see within a range of 3. So if you're within a range of 3 and you do that going past their enemy token, they notice that and react to you. That's how I understand how that works. They have 1 physical resistance, no mind resistance, only 4 health. They have an attack called Ritual Lance. It takes them 3 of their action points. It has to be a range 1. They can do they do a total of 3 points of damage, and you actually roll your defense dice trying to get these fist and blood symbols to negate that damage. They also have what's called Reach 2, so they can actually be 2 spaces away and still hit you with that, and then they cause bleed, which we'll talk about that when that happens. They do have a healing ability, and that says at the beginning of its activation, if its activation token is on what's called a green sector, and you'll see that on the momentum board, I'll show you as we're playing, they'll actually heal a wound. And then they're immune to any dice that have the BAM symbol. So when we roll to attack, if we have a die that we attack with that has that BAM symbol, it gets negated. Our spriggans over here are small enemies. You're going to see up here they're called tiny. That means that when they're defeated, they don't drop any loot. They have the 4 AP, they can see a lot farther, they only have 1 health, they have no defense. They have Fire Fury as their attack, it costs them 3 AP, range 2 through 8, and then you have to roll 2 bullets to try and defend. But they have a weak attack, so what that means is when they attack you, even if they hit you for multiple damage, they can only do 1 point of damage. And their weapon is pretty rough. And so when you roll for defense, and you have 2 bullets and a BAM, that model's actually removed, they get destroyed. Also, because they're tiny, they don't drop loot. They don't increase your threat value. I should have said whenever you did damage to a hunter, you have to increase your threat value. You don't for the spriggans. And hey, the spriggans can blow themselves up. I think that's all we need to know to go ahead and jump in. We'll go through line of sight and all of our different items as we play. I think that's better than just sitting here. So hope you guys are excited. I am. I'm pumped to show you this. I haven't really found a space dungeon crawler that I've really liked, so I'm hoping this one might be it. We'll see. It's got a bunch of mixed reviews. I will say the rules are rules, right? They're not the greatest rules. It's like a 50-page rule book plus 15 pages for the campaign book, and I feel like, yeah, it could be a lot tighter, and there's lots of corner cases with all the different skills and abilities. So I'm going to make my best judgment call. Let me know if you know that I'm wrong or if you have any questions. But otherwise, let's jump in.